So this is the fridge we're going to be using for our demonstration here. It's a Maytag. Keep in mind yours might be a little bit different at home than what we have here, but the same techniques should still apply. Warning: before doing any repairs, please disconnect your power source. So this is the compressor right here, and what the compressor does is it pressurizes the coolant, which also raises its temperature. So after the gas is compressed enough, what happens is it goes through this pipe here and all the way back there to the radiator coils. Since this is a newer model fridge, the radiator coils are actually underneath the fridge. On some of them they're on the side, on the inside. On the older models you used to see them right on the back of the fridge, like in this picture here. So as the gas goes through the radiator pipes on the fridge, it's going to give off its heat to the air that's around the pipes. The energy the gas loses from giving off its heat causes it to become liquid because it's all under high pressure. So by the time the gas is all the way through these pipes now and it's making its way back up through here, it's going to become more of a liquid. So it's going to be going all the way up into there, and then the coolant will travel up the pipes on the inside of the fridge here, and it will eventually get to about room temperature. So once the coolant goes through the expansion valve right here, it's going to enter an area of much lower pressure, and you can see that this is very small right here, and then all of a sudden it goes into this nice big tube. There's a lot more space, and then a lot of that liquid becomes a gas. Some of it stays liquid, but because it's becoming a gas, it requires a lot more energy. So that gas is going to try and take away energy from anything that it can so that it stays a gas, and so that the other liquid that's in there becomes a gas. That's why these are called evaporator coils, because the coolant that's inside of there is actually evaporating or boiling off into a gas. So because of that, it's going to take out any heat that it can, and the heat that it's going to be taking is going to be from anything that you put in this freezer right here. And then the fact that this high pressure room temperature gas is expanding so quickly and trying to take heat away is the reason why it all of a sudden becomes cold. It's just like if you have a can of compressed air and you flip it upside down and you spray it on some water, which we'll show you. So now what I'm going to do to demonstrate this is I'm going to use a can of pressurized air, and it's upside down so we get as much of that pressurized liquid as possible, and I'm going to spray it at the water and we're going to see what happens. You can actually see the water's freezing as the liquid comes in contact with it, because when it goes from the high pressure to low pressure, it wants to absorb the heat from the surroundings, and so it's freezing that water. It's obviously melting quickly because the water isn't all cold, but the little bits that are going to be frozen, and the air that's inside of the can here goes from a liquid to becoming a gas. Also, the reason why I'm wearing these gloves, as you can see, there's a bit of frost on my glove right there. So I'm just doing this for my own safety here as well. But it's something you probably shouldn't do at home. Definitely don't drink that water after you're done too. And the other thing to mention here is that this isn't actually making anything cold, it's actually just drawing heat away. There's not really any way to make anything cold. The principle is that it's taking heat away from other things so that it can become that gas. So now you'll notice that the evaporator coils are actually just in the top here in the freezer. So you might be asking, well, how does the fridge get cold? That is where these little holes in here come in. They actually go down into the fridge cabinet, and they're regulated by the fans as well as the temperature control sensors, and there's little levers that close and open on other parts of the fridge that release the air into the fridge part so that it cools the inside of the fridge to the temperature that you want it at. Some refrigerators might have a separate evaporator coil for the fridge. However, this is just the general principle of how your fridge works. So it's not going to be exactly the same for everything. but just so you have a little bit of an idea. So now after all the gas is done boiling off, it's going to make its way back all the way up through this bigger pipe down here, down the back of the fridge again, and so all the way down this pipe back here and into the compressor, so the cycle starts all over again. Now the other thing to consider when we're doing this demonstration here is that the coolant is coming into direct contact with the water, and in your refrigerator that doesn't happen. The coolant is all in an enclosed system. Nothing ever comes into contact with your food or your beverages at all, and it cools by actually pulling the heat towards the pipes and towards the system that it's enclosed in. So the coolant that your fridge uses is something called tetrafluoroethane. Some older fridges used Freon, however they determined that was bad for the ozone layer, so they used tetrafluoroethane to reduce the environmental impacts. However, it's still not something that you want to breathe in because it is heavier than air. So if you did breathe in a lung full of tetrafluoroethane, that would sit in your lungs, and the air that's outside would have a hard trouble displacing it, and it could suffocate you. So don't breathe in tetrafluoroethane. So now the other thing about your fridge's coolant system is that it has a lot of pressure in it, and it's a completely closed system. So like I said earlier, none of your coolant is ever actually touching any of your food or beverages. It's actually cooling by pulling all the heat out of the food and towards the pipes, because when it becomes a gas from a liquid, it needs a lot of energy. Now this change of state in matter from the liquid to a gas is called boiling. Typically we think of boiling when you boil, say, a pot of water on your stove. Water boils at about 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty hot. If you put your hand in there, that'll burn you for sure. So because the gas is moving very quickly when it's hot, when it loses that energy, it becomes a liquid, kind of like if you have a lid on that boiling pot of water. Any of the steam that comes up, slowly over time, you'll get the water that forms on the top of that lid as it cools down, and then it drips back into the pan. And you can actually see that yourself if you take the pot off and you turn it to the side. All the steam that's condensed on there actually drips down because it's become water again. It's lost that energy to the lid and the air surrounding it, and so you can actually see that for yourself on your stove if you ever want to take a look. So because of all the pressure, that gas is now a liquid, and when you get it to the expansion valve where there's a lot more space, that liquid quickly boils off and turns into a gas again because it's under normal conditions again. And with it being much higher than its regular boiling point, that gas is just going to all expand out as much as it can. We'll just use these screwdrivers as an example. When something's a gas, the molecules are all far away, and when it gets compressed, the molecules get closer and closer until they're close enough where they can go into liquid form, and that's when the molecules are fairly close and they're just about sliding up against each other. So then when the pressure is released, those molecules want to be farther apart, and when they're farther apart, they're also going to want more energy. Finally, don't forget to plug in your appliance. If you need to replace any parts for your appliances, you can find an OEM replacement part on our website, PCApplianceRepair.com. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, and share our video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us make more videos just like these for you to watch for free.